Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. The talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com for more info. Email me directly through benji@alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcasts. People of Distinction is an internationally syndicated show solely due to the love and support that you all continue to show. We're available across all major podcast distributors. And like I mentioned, people, if you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. Now sit back and strap in because we are delighted to showcase this next guest on our network. And on the line with us today, we have the impressive Dan Arthur Pryor. Now, people, remember the name because I'm telling you, Dan has written 2 books that are absolute necessities to be added to your shelf. I mean, listen, if you consider yourself a believer, if you consider yourself religious, if you consider yourself a follower of Christ, of Catholicism, Christianity, man, these books are going to offer some fantastic insights. You're going to want to head on over to Barnes & Noble, Amazon, a whole host of other places. The books, there's 2 of them, remember. One is called Bible Letters to the Public Editor. Next, we have Scripture Letters in the Public Square. I'm telling you, both of these books are magnificently resourceful, filled with so much information that you're going to be able to take to the bank. You know where to go. Head on over there, pick up your copies today because I'm telling you, the wisdom that's going to be found within it, but also the conversations that you're going to be able to have, pretty impactful. Now, I want to give a quick disclaimer because the interview we're getting ready to conduct is going to be broken up into 2 parts. First, of course, those 2 magnificent books, we're going to go into much further of a discussion with each of them. But then the second part will be in response to the current state of the Catholic Church. And that is one that I'm very, very much looking forward to. And I know a lot of you are as well. Sit back, strap in, have your notebooks ready, because Dan's about to give you some fantastic pieces of wisdom that you're going to be able to take to the bank. Dan, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today, sir?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Well, Dan, listen, man, it is a pleasure, okay? An absolute honor. I really do mean that. To have you here as a guest with us, your books are going to be fantastic conversation starters and a lot more benefit outside of those discussions. But first and foremost, man, thank you very much for writing these magnificent books. And when the opportunity presented itself, it was a no-brainer. We jumped at the opportunity to have you here on the network because we realized that this was going to be something that a lot of people would be very, very compelled by. And listen, as someone like myself that wasn't raised in the church, but has always been engulfed in it, I understand that the following that the Catholic and the Christian churches amongst, really just churches in general and a lot of other denominations, the following that they have is profound. But I also understand and I recognize that there is a decline in that same following. And I'm looking forward to picking your brain a little bit more about it so that we can discuss your particular opinions as to why you think that is, man. So again, looking forward to this. Before we jump into the books, first and foremost, man, I want to start off with inspiration. Dan, why did you even feel that these letters needed to be written, man? I mean, why did you begin writing them?
Well, because people are on the fence about religion. They're not sure it should be included in their life. Is it important? Does it matter at all? And those who are dead set against religion, I'm not going to affect their thinking probably. They've already decided for years. Mm-hmm. It's the undecided who I'm trying to reach, trying to stir their conscience. Example is someone I know very well. After reading all my letters about against abortion, he decided that abortion is wrong. I didn't press him on the details of that, and he didn't know for details. I mean, I wrote religiously and scientifically about life in the mother's womb. Embryology is the scientific part of that, the medical part of it. And the 2 coincide very well and actually back each other up. Religion is faith. Embryology is empirical evidence. So I'm just trying to, and I haven't questioned him yet. I will someday about which one's religious part of it, like from the Bible, life in a womb, how does God think about it, and the empirical evidence of science. I'll ask him someday, which one moves his conscience? And a lot of people who have, they were raised in a Catholic, Christian, or any other faith, Jewish faith, they leave the faith for decades, but they don't forget the teaching. Any Protestant who has left the faith for 40 years will always remember the Our Father. Any Catholic who left the faith for 40 years will always remember the Our Father and the Hail Mary. So I'm trying to reach backwards and draw that out of them. Another example is somebody else I know very well, his father. I've known from a little boy. Turns out when he was in his 80s, I learned he was raised a Catholic, but none of his children were raised in the faith. Very good guy. I have a lot of respect for him in so many earthly ways. So I look in on him, and I would speak to him, and he remembered so much from 50, 60, 65 years ago. Like I said, he left it in early adulthood. He's in his 80s, 85. So one day I fixed a pair of stairs for him, and he was so happy. He said, "What can I do for you, Danny?" I said, "I want you to go see Monsignor." He knew it was Monsignor down the road, plus the Sacrament Church. He didn't like that idea. Got him upset. I said, "You said, what can you do for me? I want you to go see Monsignor." He thought about it for a week. I get a phone call. "Danny, I've seen Monsignor. I've had confession." I didn't tell him what to do. He just knew you come back as a first step to confession, and then come back and rejoin. So this is what I mean about you don't forget what you learned. You always remember these things. So he did it all on his own and did it anyway, even despite it was against what his ease of living. So by word or by letter, I'm able to make small strides and concrete, positive happenings with people. So I'm very happy about that. And I don't know what else I've done with the strangers in the newspapers. These reach thousands of people, each letter in a newspaper before I put them in a book. So you never know. Maybe I'll find out one day if I pass away from this earth.
Dan, I'm picking up what you're putting down, man. All right, I'm following along this journey. So the follow-up question that I have for you is, I'm curious, would it be fair then to say that your inspiration for studying the Bible is the same inspiration for writing the letters?
They could have coincided if it happened that way. Turns out before I had an idea to do the letters, I studied the Bible first because I failed my children in their religious upbringing. I just failed completely, and I didn't think of it till decades later when I returned to the church. I left for 30 years, came back, always knew I'd be back, and I began to study for myself. And they were raised with some Protestant teaching, so I wanted to learn from both aspects, because they cross over a little bit, Protestants and the Catholics. There's a lot of a divide. I wanted to understand both sides of it so I could speak to them, and they could, at least they're going to know why I'm going to remain a Catholic. And so that's where it started that way. Then as I'm reading the newspapers, I'm realizing I'm seeing things, and I've always read the opinion section, the comics, the sports, and the front page for years and years. And all of a sudden, with this background of biblical knowledge now from a Catholic point of view, and even a Protestant point of view, I'm seeing things in the newspapers that's not what I'm learning from my sources. So I began to write letters to just, and they printed them. I'm surprised they would print biblical verses. It's rare. Not many people either write in or they get printed, but it's, I'm very happy with the percentages that I get printed. They don't all get printed. Nobody gets them all printed. So percentages did my favor a little bit, and I can't complain at all.
Okay, well, Dan, I'm again following along what you're saying, man. You were talking a moment ago about the newspapers and how they've printed your letters. Well, I'm curious to know, have any newspapers printed rebuttals to your letters?
They most certainly do, but it's been very few compared of a percentage. From 2011 to 2024, I've had about 280 letters, and less than that have not been printed. So the percentage is great. Out of those 280, only had 24 or 30 rebuttals. I always check a week later, 10 days later to make sure, if they I want to make one mistake. That was, I said God was in the Constitution. I was wrong. I was in a hurry. He said in the Declaration of Independence, the Creator, nature is God. So someone corrected me. There's only one mistake out of everybody's ever rebutted me. And they just don't like my position. so they can write their opinion. It's a free country. It's First Amendment right for speech and writing. So I'm okay with that. As a matter of fact, 90% of my letters are rebuttals. 95%. I see an article, editorial, another letter, and I pick out the most glaring part that my background would disagree with, and I build a letter around it. 50 words, 150 words, 250, depending upon a newspaper. They have a limit. So it's everybody's allowed to do this. Matter of fact, newspapers prefer to have a debate. You read their explanation of letters, how many words they want you to have, is their limit, and they'll even say sometimes in the description they would rather have debatable forum in the newspapers rather than everybody commending each other for doing a good job. They like to have the back and forth to see the different opinions that are floating out there on a continual basis. Good for society. But Benjamin Franklin said, if the two sides keep at it and keep showing themselves, the truth will come out eventually, hopefully. So if they're opposing, only one side could be right, you would think. So that's the premise for the whole forum of public forum, I guess.
You mentioned a moment ago, Dan, about people contacting you personally. Well, let's follow that train of thought here for a second and go a little bit further. Has anyone ever contacted you personally about your letters?
Even less than the ones who rebut me in the newspaper. It's only about six times. 2 were by phone call, and there was the same person about a different letter. It'd be in the morning paper. He'd call me up before noon, and we'd talk. And the first time he called, I said, "Oh, you know my name. You have my number. I've got your number. Let me have your name." So I put his name, his first name he gave me, to his phone number. So when he calls me again, I'll know who it is. And he did call me again later on, and to dispute my letter, and he just mildly disputed it, and then we hung up after about 5 minutes. So that was okay. And somebody sent me something in the mail from Staten Island, and again something from Manhattan, of a letter I had in the New York Daily News. It was a moral issue, and he sent me something that wasn't pleasant, and no return address, and I wouldn't want to contact him anyway, so I just put them in a file away, and I haven't heard from him since, thankfully. And someone contacted me from another newspaper. I voted for Trump, and I said in 2018 or something, he's preserving our religious freedom, doing what he said he'd do, and I commended him for doing that. She didn't like that, so she just sent a letter. Religion is not that important. She's already decided. I'm not going to move her conscience, so I won't be affecting her. But it's so at home. I'm not too crazy about it. And in the Philadelphia newspaper, I've had a few letters in there. It'll even say, "We're going to print your letter. Would you like your email to it?" And I say, "No. I don't want to be flooded. I don't want to have to contact everybody who comes to my email about a letter in the Philadelphia paper." So name and town. That's it. And that's what 90% of the people do. So it's better left that way.
Dan, you brought up a great point that I think is worth pausing a little bit on and really discussing further, or at least making an extra comment on it. Because listen, people, your belief is your belief. All right. Dan isn't trying to change your particular viewpoint. He's simply articulating his perspective, and I absolutely feel it is worth listening to. Man, we've become so divided in the country. With the advancement of technology, it is easier than ever for us to communicate with one another. Regardless of where you are on this planet, we are more connected, yet at the same time more disconnected than ever before. I'm not going to dive down the rabbit hole in all of the ways and the nuances that statement, I believe, is true. You understand what I'm talking about. When it comes to communicating and when it comes to having the discussion of something that you might not necessarily agree with, that's fine. And actually, I think it actually almost makes these books all that much more important, because the conversations that can be had, even if you disagree, are valuable. Because we're going to get back to the point of conversing and really getting down to the nitty gritty. I'm telling you, that's the reason why you got to purchase your copies of these books, man. I'm telling you, head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble today, pick up your copies and start your discussions. So key and something that unfortunately I feel has been missed. Dan, as we continue moving forward here, let's discuss a bit about the book's appearance because, listen, I can't help but notice that they have a particular look, a particular size, and an appeal to them. And knowing you, Dan, listen, I don't think that was by happenstance, brother. It had to have been something that was a lot of thought and really method approached to really be put into all of this. Dan, is there a significance to the books, the colors associated with each of them, and even the size of them?
Everything was thought out in advance by me except for one thing. They put this light green cross in the green background. They did that, and the rest is all mine. Purple, scripture, letters, and the purple cross. Well, the Word of God is Jesus, and a cross that Jesus was nailed upon. Well, purple is for kingship. Earthly kings even like purple, so Christ the King. And then the word public has, red and blue in it. The public forum in newspapers is all political, a lot of political, let's put it that way. I've noticed the political more than anything. And, the word public signifies that public discourse. Red is for Republican, blue is for Democratic. And I explain that in the preface of the book. And then the green background, just pure visibility. And when I make small little ads and put them in like a church bulletin saying, it stands out. The first one you see. So that was a part of that, the green background. And the size is very critical too. I just like the small size of it. Small paperback, fits in your hand, carry it around. Goes in your back pocket of your blue jeans or the inside pocket of your suit jacket. Goes in a lady's purse. Convenient. You can always have it when you want to read it. So,
people, I'm telling you, Dan has thought this all through, okay? There is nothing here that has been left to chance. It is something that is easy to take on the go for a busy lifestyle. There really is no reason not to pick it up. I'm telling you, this man is methodical and he is definitely put in the work. As I mentioned at the beginning of the interview, this show is going to be comprised into two sections. So that first section was all about his books. We just covered that. Now, the second section, part two of all of this, is going to go into the current state of the church. Dan, let's find out some more opinions that you have with regards to this, man. You, myself, many others, we are well aware that there is a decline currently happening within the following of the church. Well, I want to ask you, first and foremost, why are so many Catholics leaving the Catholic faith?
There's a lot of indifference, laziness. I was lazy, but I didn't disbelieve. One issue in particular, the birth control pill. This has been around for 50, 60 years now, and it's called the firestorm in the church. People have left, or they're using it in secret, and then, on the surface they're a Catholic. Well, the pill was invented, in the 50s or 60s. FDA approved it, prescription by doctors. But in the 60s now, Catholics wanted to use it. Vatican said no. When they speak, it's worldwide. When they issue a declaration like an encyclical, it's worldwide. Pope Paul VI in 1968 issued Humani Vitae. I think that's Latin for human life. And he issued, no, one natural way, according to nature, to regulate births. All the rest, no, especially the pill. So he wrote this mostly for the pill besides the other unnatural ways. And Catholics left in droves in the 70s. There were even a few bishops and priests who dissented, and they didn't get reprimanded for it, but they probably came back and agreed with Humani Vitae. They have no choice really to be a Catholic. So even today, I would suggest that Catholics are leaving today. A Catholic couple gets married, they're young, they find out they want to regulate their family, and they use the pill, and they'll leave for find a Protestant church that allows it. Their conscience can be eased in that way. And back in the 60s, my father went across the street to talk to a young Catholic couple that had moved to him, and they did just that. They left for a Protestant church. They were Catholic because they wanted to use the pill. Dad wasn't able to talk him back into it as far as we know. They left a few years later, moved down to Texas, but he tried to talk him into reasoning, logic, and we don't know if it ever worked or not. But they had left in droves in the 60s and 70s, and then they're still leaving today over that purpose. I'm sure. So we're the last church standing. Some like Protestants maybe hold to that too, like we do. It's possible still some are holding on to it, but little by little they've dropped it. I don't know. No one knows the full number, but you just hear of things. So
love it. You know, Dan, as we close out, branching off of that previous question, I want to stick here with the concept of decline. So we just talked about the following and how that has been declining. Well, in your opinion, is the Catholic Church on a theological decline?
only if you know the past. The question is yes, but if you know the past, those who were born into what the Catholic Church is today, they wouldn't know anything unless they looked to the past. This started in the 1960s with Vatican II. That was the first council in 2,000 years that did not define anything that important. And there were 20 councils in the past 2,000 years. This is the first one in 62, Vatican II. They just did a pastoral council for the to kind of like mix with the world a little bit. And has produced bad fruit. And not till you look back to Vatican II, up to now, 60 years later, you can see that it's weakened the faith.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't start out of in a vacuum either. It really goes back into the 30s and 40s. That's where modernism and, believe it or not, the communists infiltrated the church. If you look up Belladonna on Wikipedia, it treats it very well. Wikipedia is very fair-minded for the most part. A good source to look for and explain the Catholic faith. And Belladonna is immersed in that and actually undermining the Catholic faith. She was a Hunter College instructor in New York City, Manhattan in the 30s, and a teachers union activist. Well, the communists were in America, not China. They weren't communists yet. But the Russians were communists, Joseph Stalin. They infiltrated America, and they reached Belladonna in New York, saw her as a useful tool, and they recruited her. And in the 30s and 40s, she began putting communists in politics, teachers union, and the Catholic Church exclusively. And that wasn't known until 1953, when she left the Communist Party, came back to the Catholic Church through Bishop Fulton Sheen, who was very famous for his show in the 50s, Life is Worth Living. So you can still get that on YouTube. Mm-hmm. We brought her back, and she also went before Congress for un-American activities hearings. And she said in 1953, she put the communists in local politics from Washington State to Washington, D.C. She put communists in the teachers' unions across America, and she put 1,100 communists into the Catholic seminaries. And she knew at that time, in 1953, 3 had become cardinals, were in Rome advising, probably, I don't know if that was Pope Pius XII or Pope John XXIII. And then guess what? About 9 years later, 1962, we get Vatican II. So Vatican II didn't come out of thin air. It's the communists infiltrated to some degree. We don't know how much. She didn't name names. Mm-hmm. She died not naming anybody's name, which might have been helpful, but we don't know why she didn't reveal, and no one pressed her on it, as far as we know. So that's and we're here to Vatican II. Now we're here to Francis today. Francis is friendly with the world. He intends to be that way. And the traditional Catholics don't want to have anything to do with Francis, and they're trying to bring him the opposite way, back to tradition. Mm-hmm. So Christ told the apostles, the world hates him, and the world will hate you, he told the apostles. Well, we have successors all the way up to now. They're in Rome and all the bishops, and if you're friendly with the world, there's something wrong as a Catholic. So that's... Well, we'll see. Francis will, one day, we're all going to die, and so will he, and we'll get a new pope. And then we'll find out where that goes. It's all still happening, so we'll have to wait and see.
People, I'm telling you, listen to me when I tell you this, man. The time is now. I'm going to say it for you again. We're here on the line with the impressive Dan Pryor. We're discussing his books, or we just finished discussing his books, Bible Letters to the Public Editor, followed by Scripture Letters in the Public Square. It's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, it's a lot of other places. These books need to be added to your shelves, and I'm going to pose a challenge for each and every one of you out there listening in right now. I challenge you to not only first and foremost purchase your copies of the book, but start having these powerful conversations with those around you today. And remember, when you're having those conversations, because I think this is something that we've just kind of gotten away from here now, but when you're having those conversations, I view it like, man, listen, it's similar to any conversation that you would have in a loving relationship with you and your significant other. The only way we improve, the only way we advance is through effective communication. Man, let's start there and let's see where we're going to be able to take this thing, because I promise you, there is wisdom to be gained. There's so much to be had here. These books are very impressive. You want to head on over there and start your journey today. Dan, listen, man, I got to thank you again. I've thanked you before, but I'm going to thank you once more. Your books, man, they offer a thought-provoking analysis that encourages us to reflect deeply on the issues at hand, and we appreciate it tremendously. So here we go, man. Thank you for your wonderful words of wisdom, but most importantly, thank you for being a guest here with us to discuss them through people of distinction.
Very good, Benji. Thanks.